Are you always coming up with ideas? Do you marvel at successful business owners? Do you hate being told what to do? Ever take things apart just to see how they work? Are you a dreamer? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Pro Tapes and Specialties is the world leader in tape manufacturing and specialty conversion with over 40 years of experience. In addition to our pro brand of high-quality specialty adhesive tapes, we provide contract converting services that help improve your profitability, streamline your supply chain, and reduce inventory cost. We offer the most complete range of converting capabilities in the industry, such as cloth tape, double-coated tape, specialty tape, paper tape, masking tape, vinyl tape,
carton sealing tape, adhesive transfer tape, duct tape, foam tape, electrical tape, filament tape, foil tape, reflective tape.
And the tape just keeps on rolling. Visit us online today at www.protapes.com or call us at 800-345-0234. Pro Tapes, it's just how we roll.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Enclave, Life's Coming Attraction. I am your host, Kevin Wortham. This morning, man, it just came to my spirit, so we're going to do something different, and we're just going to roll and rock organically as we always try to do. On the phone is my brother Todd. Brother Todd, how are you this morning, man?
Doing fine, Kevin. How you doing today, man? So good to hear your voice.
So
really
good,
is.
So good to be heard from, man. So I am doing well. So, you know, it's so funny, man. This is truly probably 35 years, literally
yes.
35 years. Because I was at Pitt, and I think you came in which year?
I came in 87.
87.
Yes, I was a freshman in 87. Yeah.
And I'm leaving. I'm graduating. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. That's how long it's been. I remember.
Holy crap, man. Holy crap. So
yes.
we've got a lot to catch up on. So
yes, sir.
Which dorm were you staying in?
I stayed my freshman year. We were in Forbes Hall, right down there, where the gas station used to be. It's no longer there. But, Forbes Hall was the hall that I stayed in as a freshman. And that's where I was at. So.
I think that was unique at the time because I can't recall any freshmen staying at Forbes at that time. Okay.
Right, exactly.
Wow. And what was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, I think that's where the housing was for us. Matter of fact, it was myself, Nelson Walker was there, Dale Banks. I think we had Jeff Christie, because we had like a quad.
Yeah.
And then I think it was Mark Spindler was there. So there was several of us. I think Richard Allen was there.
Okay.
In that quad area. So I don't know if that's just where Pitt kind of decided to put people at the time, or that was something. But that's where we all were located at our freshman year.
Wow.
Down on the third, I think it was the third floor, matter of fact, of Forbes Hall. So that's where we were all located at.
Yeah, and for me, man, my freshman year, I was in a quad at Lothrop on the second floor. It was Dexter Hairston.
Okay.
Terrell Austin, who is now the defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, TA.
And Charles or Chuck Williams. And we when I was coming up at Pitt at that time, the Forbes was usually, and I may be wrong, at that time it was reserved for upperclassmen.
Okay, got it.
I thought everybody was primarily either between the Towers and Lothrop.
Yeah. I think that freshman year we were all. A lot of us. I don't know the rationale behind it, but that's what most of us were. For our freshman year. So
now let's jump right into it. So you are a traveling man. Is that because of your business?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So my company, TAP Expert Educational Consortium, is a leadership consulting company,
Yes.
and we have clients really all over.
Okay.
And so many times, since we're going back now to doing things in person, because of course COVID kind of had you doing things. We're doing workshops really virtually, which is not the same impact as being in person.
Yes.
And so we were just in Charlotte and Raleigh. I mean, in fact, Saturday and Sunday I was in Charlotte Saturday and in Raleigh on Monday. And so had several clients we had to talk to. We had workshops. So yeah, I do a lot of traveling, but I enjoy it. I get to meet a lot of different people. I enjoy what TAP does. Our company is a leadership consulting company that focuses on helping leaders become better.
Yes.
It was something that is a passion of mine. My background is school administration. And so I've really ran some large, comprehensive turnaround schools in the country, and just saw that it really came down not to the staff or the teacher, or not the staff or the students, but it really was the leadership.
Yes.
And how do you make sure you have effective leadership? And so that's how TAP evolved, because my experience in education, I had saw schools nationwide that I worked in, that again, it wasn't so much the people that were working there, but how the leaders were leading the people,
Okay.
the kids or the parents. So.
Now let me stop you. In your vision,
Mm-hmm.
30 years ago, 35 years ago, did you see this for yourself?
Well, I knew I would be in education because I was a driving force, and I had a high school teacher, several teachers in high school, tell me that I wasn't college material.
Yes.
And that was the driving force behind it. I think I said to that staff person at that time that, I'm going to grow up one day and run schools and show you that I can do it, because, how many kids have you told that to?
Yeah.
And so I was always a strong believer that I would go into schools and help, those schools that were struggling. And then I realized that, there were many components of why the school struggled, but the leader was the most important component.
Now
so, go ahead.
Let me ask this question, man, and I apologize.
No, sorry.
The person or persons who told you that you would not amount to anything and this is not what you were going to do, was this a person of color?
It was not. It was not.
Wow.
And so I, it made me think kind of about, how the influence we have on children, because I said to myself, what if I was a kid that was a jumping off point to where it would spiral me down? And so I've always asked staff to make sure, I've had staff of 150, and I've had some very large schools and schools that have been high profile because they were either going to be slated to close, or there was some documentation about the fact the school wasn't being successful. So, my job has been to come in and turn the school around. And so I think that I've always told staff that your influence is really big. And I've always said to staff, there's a Todd Pipkin sitting in your class. I told a story that, I'm more than proud of. I graduated, from high school with a 2.0. I scored 750 in my SATs, and I just didn't have an interest in school at the time, but was lucky and fortunate enough to be able to play football. And, Kev, you get recruited and you're worried about going to just the NFL sometimes. But, I realized that, my passion was helping those students who possibly thought they couldn't make it. Because I was one of those kids. I wasn't an honor student. I wasn't, the top of my class. And I think most people probably counted me out, but I've always believed in myself no matter what. And I think that's the key, that you believe in who you are, no matter what people may say. You just want to continue to move forward. So
now let's, I wanted to open up the show, and I wanted to jump in there immediately so the audience can hear what you're doing now. And let's go back to the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So you're in high school, you're playing football, and in spite of you playing football and exhibiting that potential, someone still said to you that you're not going to amount to anything. Maybe college is not for you. At that moment, what were you feeling? What were you processing, man?
Yeah, I think at that moment, it kind of, again, I said to the person at that juncture, I said, I wonder how many kids you told that to.
Wow.
And I said, that was a defining factor for me to say that I wanted to be in education.
Yes.
And ever since that part, I've been from a teacher to a principal to a head of school, which is a superintendent role. To, running some of the most controversial high school turnarounds in the country. And so, that was a pivot. People always say there's a pivoting point in your life.
Yes.
I think for me, that was a pivotal point, to decide what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And because I realized, and there were a lot of great people at the high school that I went to that helped me, but there were some that, that had that stereotypical view of how things, were, and that's not, that's not fair. But you see that, I think in the education system really across the board in many places. And again, I've always said that the teacher has a huge impact on students because they influence them in a lot of ways of what you say and how you behave and how you act. So
and
will help that student be successful or not.
And as you're talking, as you're speaking about your story, I'm just thinking about just in my small town of Trenton, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many times does an educator take this oath to teach and provide you with the best, but yet and still someone has it within them that no matter how you are, they still want to put you on the wrong path of like this destruction. And so I'm thinking about, wow, we've got to do a much better job with the selection process.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we've got at some point we've got to pull that teacher aside, because I thought they would do it at sometimes. You would have like peer review and say, you know what, you as a teacher, you're just not cutting the mustard. We need you to be a positive influence in this young person's life. Yeah. And if you're not going to do such, then man, we can't have you around because your energy is destructive, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you hear that, but ball is still going good for you. And who is starting to recruit you at that time? What other schools besides Pitt are starting to recruit you?
Yeah, so I could have went really anywhere in the country to play football. I was fortunate enough. My 5 final choices were Notre Dame, Syracuse, Pitt, Maryland, and Michigan State. So those are the 5 final choices that I did my visits on. But I was fortunate enough to have the ability to keep, to be able to play but those were the final 5 schools that I chose to visit. And with Pitt being, I'm from Pittsburgh. My high school was right in the shadow of Pitt. And there have been, of course, several people who have went to Pitt from my high school, like Dan Marino or Salson Siri, that went to the Central, the school I went to, and so a lot of influence of people who already had been there and had a great experience, I'm from Pittsburgh, so I thought it'd be great to play in a city that I was from and knew it pretty well, and so I thought I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be able to play in a hometown.
Now let me stop you for a second, Todd. I had this conversation with another guest, right? Well, several guests who have attended Pittsburgh with me. Did you find Pittsburgh to be a racist city?
So I'm born and raised, and so I've been gone from Pittsburgh since '99.
Okay.
I tell the story that I have some people have done internships with me, and I've had a young lady who did a recent study she's in public policy on the demographics and makeup of Pittsburgh. And one of the things that is really relevant is that Pittsburgh is probably one of your most racially divided cities in the country.
Yes.
You look at the neighborhoods, the data shows that it's racially mixed and divided in a way that many times is not really beneficial to people of color.
Yes.
And so I think that, you have the first Black mayor, Ed Gainey, has been elected, which is a big step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
But Pittsburgh there's been some substantial studies that talk about Black women having a hard time, Black men having a hard time there. Economically, I think there are a lot of people who may come from a different area, not live in Pittsburgh, but coming from somewhere else and may benefit. But if you have people who live there all their lives, you find that there still is a struggle for housing, equity, employment. There are still some major issues for people of color in Pittsburgh. And I think that, I've lived a lot of places. I've been gone since '99, and I've always told the story I thought was interesting. When I moved to Phoenix, there was I moved from Pittsburgh to Phoenix and looking for a house, and the lady said to me, "You ever thought about building a house?" And in my mind, coming from Pittsburgh, I didn't see Black folks building homes.
Okay.
And so it was so funny. I said to her, I said, "Well, I can't build a house." And she looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" Like I was lost in space. And she said, "Yeah, you can." And what I realized is that my mentality and what I had been around was that I had not really seen people of color, Black folks in homes that they were building. And so it was an eye opener for me, which really kind of let me know that, I had limited access sometimes to things in Pittsburgh, where when I left, the access for me has been really phenomenal. I think that I always tell the story. I don't think I would be where I am today if I had not left Pittsburgh. Now, it would always be home.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people that helped me. But I think I had to go away to see what other opportunities were out there. And I've been exposed to some really great opportunities that I probably would not have been exposed to if I had stayed in Pittsburgh only. But I took that risk, and I said, I look back on it as probably one of the best decisions that I made in life was to leave Pittsburgh, because, you leave a comfort zone.
Yes.
And sometimes if you're not willing to step out of that comfort zone, you never grow. So I think living in Phoenix or Charlotte or Raleigh, where I've lived at, those are great cities I've lived in and have met a lot of great people because of it, Kevin.
Okay.
And yeah.
So we're going back and forth, and at some point we're going to hit right in the middle. But I think I like the going in the back and forth, right? Starting at the end where you are now, and then going back and just looking at and talking about that progress, making who you are today. So you accept the offer to go to Pittsburgh, to come to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You come to Pittsburgh, and when we were prepping for this, you said something very unique, right? Well, not unique, but you're playing football. You get hurt, right?
Yeah.
Which was not unique, because sometimes getting hurt is inevitable because of the game.
Yes.
But your illness or your injury, right?
Right.
Was such that if you were to play again, you could be injured for life.
Yeah.
Exactly. Take me to that point, man.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got epilepsy, which was caused by a concussion. But playing football now, it probably would have stopped me from playing in high school. But I had a seizure on the field during a Boston College game. My seizures are not grand mal; they're petite, so I become disoriented. But one of the concerns that playing outside linebacker, so I was playing defensive end. And playing Boston College, the play goes away from me, which is a blessing in disguise, because if the play came to me when I have a seizure, I'm disoriented. So I was just standing on the middle of the field, but the play went away from me, and so Pitt was really concerned that, hey, if this kid has another seizure on the field, but the play comes to him, no offensive lineman is going to sit there and not hit me.
Absolutely,
I think that, it's like a clean shot to knock him out. And so I think that was the concern they had, that, this kid, if the player came the other side, I probably would have been injured. And so it was Pitt's decision that when Coach Godfrey was there, my parents, Dr. Freddie Fu, rest his soul, was just saying that basically, this is something that you have to, you got to take a step back and say, what's more important is your health, your life. And what if you were to get hit? You could be paralyzed. And so it was a decision, and I you saw me put that article on there on Facebook a couple weeks ago, but that was a pivotal moment, how I had to decide, do I tuck my tail and mope about it, or do I capitalize and just move forward in the opportunity? And that's what I did. I worked for Bill Bryant.
But understand, you can say that cavalierish, now, at your age and having gone through what you've gone through, but let's talk about, you're 18, 19 years old, and someone says you can't do what you want to do, which was at the love of your life at that time. It's not just simply tucking your tail. Come on, what were you feeling at that moment? Did you feel like all was lost? Did you feel like there was this mound of depression that's coming around you, or you still felt exuberant, like I can beat this and this is the time to really, man up. I mean, were you thinking like that?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, I was, Kev, because I never forget Rob Blank, who Rob is still there, I think. Rob is a trainer there. Rob, I'll never forget the question asked. He says, Todd, are you going to be okay? And I said, yeah, I'll be fine. He said, well, do you need to see somebody psychologically? Do you need to meet? I said, no. I said, Rob, life goes on.
Wow.
I said, because I still have to graduate.
Yes.
I mean, I still have to work. I mean, I still got to do what I got to do. And I think, what I did, Kevin, instead of, just going to, working with Buddy Morris or going to working with the trainers. I mean, my background was education. That's what I was going to school for. So I asked Coach Godfrey, I said, can I work with Bill Bryant, who was running academic support service at that time? And he said, yeah, I think it'd be great. So I had an internship with them. And I remember working with, the freshmen and sophomores, because I think I was a junior. And I was working toward getting my education degree. And that's what I saw as an opportunity to put on my resume once I got done graduating, that I had an internship working for the athletic department with academic support. So for me, I switched it around and said, I can't. And I think in my eyes, the way I saw it, everybody was looking at how is this kid going to react to this?
Yes.
And so I said, I couldn't sit around and I never have been like that. My personality never been like that. I wasn't going to sit around and mope. I wasn't going to sit around and feel sorry for myself. I graduated in 4 years. I used the 5th year of eligibility for graduate school. So here's this kid that, graduated high school with 720 SATs, 2.0 GPA, and here I'm graduating in 4 years, and I'm going on to graduate school, and so I looked at it as an opportunity. And I think to this day, Kev, when I speak to students many times, because I've worked with thousands of kids, young people, and everybody wants to go to the next level. And I tell the story because when you come in my office, I have that story up because I have young men all the time with young ladies and say, hey, I'm going to the NFL, I'm going to the WNBA. And so I said, well, let me just tell you my story.
Yes. Awesome.
and I think it's a way to say, because most kids don't know who you are. Yeah. And I say, well, I was one of the most highly recruited linebackers in Western Pennsylvania. I could have went anywhere in the country to play football, but I didn't go to the next level. Here's what happened. Yes. And so you have to be able to, I think for me, it's been a story that I can tell people many times about, we all have failures, or we all have things that we wish would have happened but did not, and that you can always come back from that setback. I just believe that no matter what it is, you have to believe that first. And I think for me, being in education and seeing all the young people that I've impacted, yes. I think that particularly African-American men or young men, I think I try to set the example to say, I've been there, and I've been at a place where, you're like, oh man, this is all wrapped up. But you got to say to yourself, hey, what are my options and where can I go forward? And so I think I try to set the example for all my young people, all my kids. I'll call my kids. Absolutely. That I work with, and my schools have always been primarily inner city, African American, and they've been tough, and so I think I've always tried to set the example that they can make it no matter what their circumstances are.
Absolutely,
and they can do it. So
now, Todd. So you finished your internship,
mm-hmm.
right? You're in grad school.
Yeah.
When does the entrepreneurial light bulb kick in for you? Like, wow, right?
Well, I think I've always had it. I think I just sometimes life gets in the way and you don't pursue it. And yes. I think timing is everything. I think for me, when I started TAP, of course I was working in some really substantial schools and some really big school districts, and I think that when COVID kind of came around and some of the things, it kind of opened your eyes to see things differently.
Okay.
And, so, you TAP is been around since about 2017, but I really wasn't pursuing it the way I probably am now.
Okay.
And I think that COVID exposed some things to me that I thought, you know what, it's time to really do something to be more impactful and really make change, yes. and not just talk about it. And so I think that I really put an all-fledged effort into TAP around probably 2018, 2019.
Okay.
And really has started to take off pretty substantially. So I think that those experiences have helped me to know who's part of the team, who do I want on the team, and I think that my experiences have helped me to be in the position where I'm at now with TAP, and and I think without those experiences, I can't move TAP without the experiences. I think that's important, and so timing to me is everything. And right now, we have a really great team of people that are part of TAP and just really helping to grow it.
Now let me stop you for a second, Todd. So you start TAP in 2017.
Yeah.
What are you doing prior to that creates the foundation of TAP? Because you mentioned that you're going around the country and you're going into troubled schools. What are you What are you doing in these schools, and how do they call you to be in those schools?
Yeah, so I worked for one of the big projects I had was Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District. That was the Olympic project. The Olympic project was a school that was in Charlotte. There were 5 schools that were slated to be closed by Judge Manning. Judge Manning was a huge influential judge there in Mecklenburg County, and really wanted schools to do better. And so Olympic was one of those schools that was slated to close. I was selected as one of the principals there to help turn Olympic around. It was the Coalition of Essential Schools had got money from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to really turn Olympic around. Pam Espinosa had wrote a pretty substantial grant, who was the founding principal, or one of the lead principals there when it was just Olympic. And then we broke the school. It was called a conversion. And so a conversion is when you have schools, you take a large comprehensive high school and convert it to 5 smaller schools.
Yes.
And so that project was pretty substantial. There were several projects like that around the country. I think 2 of them were not successful, but Olympic was. And it was, to this day, that model that we use from the community engagement piece to the parent universities, many of those were implemented within Charlotte-Mecklenburg whole system now based off the Olympic project model.
Wow.
And so that model, it's very challenging, very difficult, but it was well worth it. And it really, that community engagement piece that Mike Raylon, who is running still to this day, we did a project with Habitat for Humanity. I was an Olympic in 2006, 7, 8. And the Olympic project we have with Habitat is still going on. It was something I remember me and Mike talked about, where our students would help to build a Habitat house.
Yes. And
then they would take that house into the community. But it was a project that me and Mike talked about. I remember discussing it, and it's still going on to this day. And so I'm always proud to see how, if you look at Olympic High School now, they're doing some phenomenal things there. And that school was slated to close, but it was something that I take great pride in, saying that, we helped to turn something back around so kids could be successful. So that was one of the school districts I worked for. I worked for Edison Learning as well. Edison is a company that helps schools transition all over the country.
I remember
yes.
Edison, because there was
Philly.
Yeah. So what happened was there was a man here in Trenton named Bill Granville.
Okay.
And he was a retired Exxon Mobil oil executive, African American.
Yeah.
And at that time, he was the second highest ranked or first highest ranked.
Wow.
And so he knew that he wanted to start a charter school, and so he partnered with the Edison School.
Yes.
And so they came in and they funded his program. So I'm familiar with Edison. So you are working with Edison, and so you become like this turnaround principal, right? Turnaround specialist, right?
Right.
Now, when you are a turnaround specialist, or when you are a specialist at that level, how do people take you when you're coming into their schools? Are they receptive of you? Are they like, I'm going to help this brother out, particularly like, or I'm going to be another thorn in his side? Right.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I think one of the reasons why I've always said, I think that one of the best skills that I ever learned was to really have a good relationship with people.
Yes.
And I was taught that from, my father and Dr. Barnes, rest his soul, too, were really two influential people who were administrators in Pittsburgh. My father and Dr. Barnes, who, was the superintendent of some of the largest school districts in the country, always told me that the relationship is more important than the curriculum.
Yes.
It's more important than any kind of project you do, is more important than the budget. He said, because the reality is that if you cannot build relationships with people, then people will not help you.
Yes.
And so one of the things I've always done is I think I've always insulated myself with, number one, an effective team, because I knew that I could not do it all.
Yes.
And so when you go into a situation where people already are concerned about their job, they're concerned about, who's coming in to make what changes. There's a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
And so my job as the head of school is to really make sure, principal is to make sure that when I come in, I create an environment where there's an avenue of conversation and saying, okay, we're here to work together. Are you willing to work with me? And if you are, what do you need from me to support you to do your job? And I think that's one thing that I'm seeing today, that you have a hard time in schools, because as a leader, you have to realize that they are people first.
Absolutely.
And then if you can come in that perspective and realize that people are people first, and that they have families, that they have medical conditions, they have issues at home. I mean, there's a lot of things people deal with and then come to work. It can't be work first and then home second.
Yes.
And I think that I've always created the environment at every school I've been at that you got to take care of you first. That's the most important thing. And then you can take care of the job, because the reality is, if that person can't take care of what they have to take care of, they will never take care of you. Where if they take care of you, take care of themselves first, they can give you 110%. And I think that all the staff I work with, everybody I think who knows me, will say that that's one thing Pipkin always pushes, that you got to take care of you first.
Yes.
Because I had a principal at one point where it was a teacher that was always late, and that teacher was always late because he said he wanted to terminate her, and I said, well, do you know why she's always late? And he said no. And I said, well, her and the husband get into an altercation every morning, and it creates this havoc that makes her late. I said, and so he asked me, well, how do you know that? I said, because I know my people. I know them as people first.
I had a chance to talk with her. Yes. Wow.
Right. Exactly. And so that was a learning experience for that principal, because a lot of times, we're not willing to ask, why are behaviors happening the way they're happening?
Now, let me stop you for a second. Now, when you come in as a turnaround specialist, is the existing principal working side by side with you, or you are the principal?
It just depends on the situation.
Okay.
Like the ones that usually, if I'm coming as a principal, then that principal has been probably either removed or is not there.
Okay.
If I come as a head of school, then a lot of times, which is like a superintendent, which I was at Rocky Mount Prep, then know that staff is in place, and either you take a look at replacing that staff, or you take a look at working with the staff that's already in place. So you really kind of get a feel for who's there already. I mean, the ultimate goal would be to work with the people that are there.
Yes.
But if the school's already having a difficult time, and you take a look at the data, and the data reveals certain things to you, then you have to ask that person, hey, I'm noticing that the reading scores are at 46%. How do we get them to 80? Or can we do that? Are we able to do that based off what the data is saying? And I think you take a look at the data and then make an evaluation. Is this the right person for the position? Do I need to find somebody else? So there are decisions that have to be made. I think you have to make decisions that are tough, but I think dignified as well. I think you never make a decision when you take people's dignity away from them. I think you never do that. I'm a strong believer that sometimes decisions have to be made, but how you speak and communicate that to people is very important. And I think that, go ahead.
I'm sitting here and I am just so amazed, right? Because we need, wow. So when you come in as a turnaround specialist, right? Mm-hmm. When you are in a predominantly school of color, How are the teachers, and how are first of all, how are the teachers responding to you? And then how are the African American teachers responding to you, as well as the students? Because I know that's a loaded question, because what I'm seeing is, here comes this brother. You're not the average size brother.
Right. Yeah.
And you're coming in and says, we've got to make changes. We've got to turn this program around.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into their heads as to how they perceive you, and who is the first one to jump on your bandwagon and say, yes, Todd, I am here to support you because you're here to support us. So that's a large question to unpack, but let's do that.
Yeah, well, I think that, again, I go back to relationship piece. One of the things that I've always done is build a relationship with people first.
Yes.
I think that's really important. So I've always got to know the staff. And I think once people see that you're willing to roll your sleeves up and make it happen, they do it. So the first thing that we did at prep never, here's a situation where I think which you create change. The students were, right in my prep, campus was, we're on 32 acres, 150,000 square foot facility. It was a massive charter school.
Yes.
And they didn't have a cafeteria. And the kids were eating in the classroom. And so one of the first things that I did when I walked around the building, I said, my goodness, the carpet in the rooms, you could smell because people had spilled food in the carpet. It was terrible.
Wow.
And so one of the things that I think you have to do, people have to physically see change.
Yes.
And so we built a cafeteria that summer where the kids could eat. And I think that it allowed staff to see that, this guy is not playing. He's serious.
Wow.
And so I think that was the first step that I looked at doing physically, changing the campus so people could see that there was change happening. From painting the walls to really, doing something structurally that people say, okay, he's about the business. Now, not everybody jumped on board. You're going to have people who, I always tell you this, if everybody like what you're doing, you ain't doing your job. The reality in schools is that you're going to have some people who do not like what you're doing, and that's okay.
Yes.
Because my job is not to make everybody happy. My job is to make sure that the kids are okay. That's it. I've always came with the focus when people ask me about doing a program or doing something. I say, is this what's best for kids? And if you can't answer that question for me, then it's not what I'm going to do. And so I've always made the focus point, you hear that many times, but I'm a strong believer. I think the kids will always tell you that Pipkin was hard as hell on us, but he was going to be fair. And he was going to give me the benefit of the doubt because I understand that I was one of those kids that was in trouble all the time. And, some people didn't give me the benefit of the doubt, but there were some who did.
Yes.
And I thank those who gave me the benefit of the doubt. So for me, the relationship piece, to answer your question, Kevin, is really important. You just can't go in and slam the hammer on people and tell people that they're going to do something because you can't make nobody do anything. I don't care if you're the supervisor or not. The reality, people do stuff for you because they see a value in what they're doing and they see that you value them. And that's really what's important. And that's why that's why our schools are somewhat in turmoil right now because, we have to value the people that work with us.
Yes.
And I think if you value the people that work with, the people will run through a wall for you.
Very true.
I think that's a trait that you're not taught in a book. You're not taught that in a graduate school. You're not taught that in a master's program. You really are building a relationship is something that has to be sincere, it has to be genuine. It has to be something that is from the heart. And people can tell if you BSing them. Yes. They'll tell you in a minute, no, you BSing me. But I think that, I've always stood my ground on what I believe, no matter how controversial it was going to be, no matter what people were going to say. I was never going to let the outside influences impact what I thought morally was right. And I've always gone in that moral compass. So because I'm a strong believer at the end, people will really kind of see, now we understand what he was talking about. And I've had that happen to where I've had people battle me for the whole 2 years. I was there 3 years, and then at the end, they finally realized, I see people what you were talking about. And I was like, yeah, I was going to hold my ground no matter what you said in the paper, what you put on social media, what you put wherever. I don't care. I tell people now, if you Google my name and it says Todd Pipkin, it says that there were some parents at Rocky Mountain Prep who wanted to get rid of me because I made some decisions I thought were in the best interest of the school. And it wasn't about public opinion. It was about what I knew was best and, what data I had. So, again, as an administrator today, your job is not to appease or please people. It's to make sure that the kids are okay.
Yes.
And I think that's where we've lost the focus.
Now,
we really got to go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me ask this question because I want to really understand the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're just sitting by, waiting for that phone call, right?
Yeah.
The phone call comes from a school district. I mean, how do you get to become the turnaround specialist? So you're just sitting there. The phone rings. You get an email, and someone says, "Todd, I am from Edison Prep. I am from so and so school." Take me through that process as to how they bring you in and how they've decided that you are the person now to become the turnaround specialist. How take me from the beginning. How's that process?
Well, I think that like for Charlotte Meck, I applied and I was hired from them, and then that Olympic project kind of then helped to catapult the people to see that I was able to turn things around. So at that point, like I opened the Male Leadership Academy of Charlotte. I was asked for that school, which is an all-boys school.
Yes.
Rocky Mount Prep, of course, I think my name was tossed on as far as some things that I could do, and I could do up here as far as what I had done at Olympic. Edison was something I, worked around and really was known for working in Virginia and some other school districts that, needed some help. And so I think that you kind of get a reputation of being able to turn things around, and then people start asking, "Hey, Ken, what do you think about this project? What do you think about this?" And so a lot of times I may get emails from a headhunter saying, "Hey, we have a school that we're looking at, needs to be turned around, and we've seen that you've done X, Y, and Z. Would you be interested in?" So, I think now I'm not at a juncture where I want to do that work in a school anymore. I think, my job now is more with TAP, our company, is to really help those leaders to be successful, because I think that I've demonstrated that you can turn a school around if you've got certain components in place.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where that's how that evolves.
Yes.
And then there's times when I look at certain schools that I like, I thought about, I like to help that school turn around. I mean, I think that you look at kind of the demographics, look at the curriculum, what they're using, you look at the facilities, you look at everything, and just say, hey, is this something I want to be involved with?
Yes.
And, and when you do something that's pretty successful in school, it's highlighted pretty quickly, because you hear about so many things that are troubling in school that, when you hear something that's good, people want to figure out, well, how did you go about doing it? And I think, too, that, I was able to develop a lot of partners in school. So, for example, NASCAR was one of my biggest supporters of the Male Leadership Academy of Charlotte, which was an all-boys African-American school, and NASCAR was my biggest supporter.
Wait,
people ask me.
Time out. No, wait, hold up.
Yeah.
NASCAR was your biggest supporter and sponsor?
Yeah, they were one of our biggest sponsors. Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, and I go back to Kev, the relationship.
Yes.
Again, I think that NASCAR saw the value that we brought to the MLAC, and they saw what we were trying to do, and that's what I was saying. A lot of times, I think in the school districts we make a mistake of not leaving the building, and we think that if we just stay in the building, somebody will come to us, and that's not how it works. And one of the things that people have always asked me, how did I get Belk, or how did I get General Dynamics, or Wells Fargo, or Bank of America, or NASCAR? It was because, I've always made a conscious effort to partner with people outside of the school zone, because I think that there are a lot of companies that want to help, but many times we don't go out to seek the help. And we depend on just the funding from the state, and you really can't do that. I mean, I never did depend on just funding from the state. I was going to look for scholarships or grants or other companies to support us. Like I think about Rocky Mount Prep and Belk and Brandy, who was the general manager at Belk, which is really big here in the South, in North Carolina, the Belk stores. He closed his store down for 2 evenings for our parents to shop for their kids to be able to get their clothes. And then he, gave them food. And I mean, it was a great part.
Stop,
yeah.
Man. One of the things that I'm finding upsetting about this conversation, I mean, it's all good, but it's all bad.
Yeah.
It's like you are really changing lives, and we could not get this conversation to move the needle. That piece about NASCAR, that should have been like a national press conference, a national press release. No, because think about the irony of this, right?
Yeah.
At one point, NASCAR was supposed to be so insulated that they didn't even want black folks to participate. But then here you are building a relationship where NASCAR is your biggest supporter to your school.
Yeah. Matter of fact, they helped.
But nobody would know that, right? And then the other part, you talked about the Belk company.
Yeah.
This guy decides that the best way to help is to shut down my store for 2 days a week to allow the parents to come and shop uninterrupted.
Right.
I mean, come on, man. See, those are the kind of stories that need to be on the national or regional radar. And I thank you for sharing that. So I want you to go back to and tell us once again how important it is for building relationships, man.
Yeah, it's very important. It allows me to. It allows me to. I never depended on the state funding for programs.
Yes.
So there was money that we had to do, but if I wanted to do something in particular, I would usually find a sponsor. For example, the Olympic. I never forget. We had students who at that time, maybe they're working at McDonald's and making $6 an hour.
Yes.
We're at the Federal Reserve Bank. We had a partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank, and our kids were making $15 to $17 an hour. I remember that. And you take a kid from the projects, and their friend is making $5, and they're making $17. That lets them see there's a reality that I could get out of this place.
Yes.
And I think that was the whole goal of why I established partnerships, because I want to take a look at internships. I want to take a look at exposure, because that's the biggest thing that we do not expose students to exposure. We don't expose them to the other areas of life. I have kids who never left Charlotte. I had kids who had never left Pittsburgh. I had kids who had never left the neighborhood. And so I've always believed that if you expose them, like when we take kids to NASCAR, I mean, that racetrack up there is humongous. I mean, I think it's 5 or 6 football fields. And for them to be able to see, the cars and participate and, to kind of get awards and see what's all involved, that's exposure.
Yes.
And so I think that we have to take people from this traditional, here's the basketball court, football field, to how do you take them to the corporate headquarters of, I don't know, Bank of America, wherever it may be.
Yes.
I think that if it's showing them how to be a chef, if it's showing them how to work on logistics, whatever it may be. I mean, I think exposure to as many opportunities, because we don't know what is going to turn a kid on. It could be that experience at one time that says to them, I went to go visit, I don't know, this architecture firm, and now I want to be an architect.
Yes.
So I think that exposure is such a powerful thing that you have to be able to do it. And it comes out of relations that the leadership builds outside the school community. And I think that's something that we haven't done a good job of. I think we've tried to do it, but I think for me, my success has come off the fact that I've built really sustainable and long relations with people that I can call. I could go back to Pittsburgh and call people and say, I need something from X, Y, and Z, or Charlotte, or wherever it may be that I've been. And people say, Todd, how can we help?
Now,
and so I think that, go ahead.
Let me ask this question. So throughout this whole process of you working and then starting your own company, what was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome?
Well, I think for me, the biggest, was really putting the time in. Okay. I don't think people realize that when you run a company, there is no set time. So like last night, I got in. So yesterday, we had a workshop yesterday I got up at 6 in the morning. Dr. Alexander was doing a presentation in Raleigh. So I had to get her from her hotel. We drove to Zebulon, got there at 9. The presentation went from 9 to 11. We got done from 11. We went to the airport. Our plane left at 2 to come back to Pittsburgh. So we flew from from Raleigh to New York to Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And then I got in at 8 o'clock. I had to get something to eat, and I have some work to do for things this week that I'm doing. So, I didn't get into bed till, probably about 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I got up this morning because I always exercise.
Yes.
So I get up at, about 6 or maybe 5 sometimes. Like I got up 5 this morning to exercise because it's a really important part of what I do. It's not just working.
Yes.
And so, I think that, people are not understanding that if you're going to run a business, it does provide you the freedom, but you got to put the time in, and you're going to put miles in, like I'm going to leave today and go to Raleigh. I'm driving back to Raleigh because my car was here in Pittsburgh because I came from Philly. So I was in Philly. So I just, I was in Philly and I drove here because I was like, well, it's cheaper for me to drive here than to fly. And so, people don't, I think they don't understand that it's not as simple as it seems. And so if you're going to you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to put the hours in, but the difference is you're building something that is yours.
Yes.
And so you decide how much money you want to make. You decide how many hours you want to work, not somebody telling you, deciding or telling you what you should do. It's ultimately you decide what you want to do, but you have to put the work in.
Absolutely.
And that's what many times people may not understand is that. So for me, it was like I can't do it part time. You got to really fledge it, and you got to be able to do it. And I think you got to be able to financially do it too, and take a look at, is it something financially I can do and sustain? And
yes,
and I think you take steps. I mean, not everybody can just say, okay, I'm going to leave a job. I get that. Mm-hmm. But the goal should be that you put the time in. And I say this. Somebody asked me, I didn't see a football game all last year. I didn't watch any professional football. I didn't watch the NCAA championship last night.
Wow.
I just that's not what I'm going to do. I got things to do, and I think when you're trying to build something in momentum, everything else has to be secondary. So you got to decide what's important.
Yes, and
that's probably one of the biggest challenges I think for many people who start their own businesses to realize, oh wow, I didn't realize it was going to be all like this.
Yeah. Now let me ask this question. So 5 years from now, where is TAP? Where is TAP 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think that.
And I love the name because as you're saying TAP, I'm being mindful that early on in your career, or even before you started a career, a teacher wanted you to tap out.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. I think that we are on the right trajectory to be really a leading consulting company.
Okay.
I think that, and I say this because of the team. I mean, from Patrick Patterson to Dr. Chance Lewis to Dr. Amy Alexander to Dr. McCree to Dr. Ford. I mean, I've got a really great team.
Yes.
And I think that is always, it's like this, because I always say, Pitt we had some phenomenal athletes on our team.
Absolutely.
And, but there were some games that we didn't win because we didn't play together as a team.
Yes.
And, we probably should have won. I look at, the athletes that went from my year from 87 to 90, I think there were like 32 draft picks. There were 7 first rounders. I mean, we had phenomenal athletes, but I think it's important that the team always work together. And so I think that, for me, it's about our team and who we put in place. And we have a phenomenal team, and that team is really driving everything right now. It's nothing that Todd is doing. I think it's really, from Amy with her background in trauma to Patrick and his background with fatherhood, and we're launching the autism piece that Dr. Ford is leading. And I didn't realize how significant autism was for the Black community until I talked with her, and I saw a need to work on that. And so we're launching the autism. We're having a big workshop that's launching into this month, and it'll launch into what TAP is doing with autism. So I think that we have a very bright future. I think 5 years from now, I think, we'll be known and to really be an impactful organization that helps. And that's what I want to do. It's not about being the largest or biggest. It's about really what have we done to effectively make change.
Yes.
And I think that's important to me. It's not, because I'm a strong believer, if you're good at what you do, the money will come.
Absolutely.
It's about, are you making an impact to make people's lives better? And I think that's really important to me. How do I make the lives better of people around me, those who are within me, within our circle,
Yes.
and those that we may not know? Because I think you want to leave the world, to me, I want to leave a legacy that I made a change.
No.
Not that I was a millionaire. I want to say that I impacted, or we did X, Y, and Z. I mean, we were looking to start a foundation that we're working on, and I want to be able to really leave a legacy that I helped change even my home state and my home city to where people I've influenced or who I've helped influence to help them. So I believe that if you help people, everybody else helps you.
No, Todd,
that's the bottom line.
No.
Yeah.
Todd, while you were talking, what came to my mind was, again, several thoughts. So here we go. The first thing was, you mentioned doctor, I forgot her name, but you said she deals with trauma.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I'm noticing is that we never had to come face to face or come to grips with trauma as if we're coming out of this pandemic. I mean, prior to the pandemic, we knew trauma existed, but we really didn't try to address it. But now we see so many kids that were away from their friends and that whole that whole social construct that they were so used to, they didn't have. Trauma was abound for these kids. Hold that thought. And then the second thing is, I'm thinking about what you do and with your team. It would seem like any and every city should be having not a Todd, but they should be having an organization similar to yours, if not yours, come in to say, as an outside evaluator, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And how can you help us bridge the gap? And I think oftentimes, man, these schools are just not doing it. It's almost like they're perpetuating failure, right? But they're perpetuating failure at minimum degrees, right? So it's not like the obvious failure, but it's the I guess the discretionary failure over years that you see that you can't fix this because this whole thing needs to be torn down and start all over again. And okay, I'm sorry, I digress.
No, I get it. I get it. I think with Dr. Amy Alexander, she's our chief operating officer, and she's our lead consultant for trauma. And Amy's background, Amy wrote her dissertation over 10 years ago on trauma, so she was ahead of the curve before. Now it's this big deal.
Yes.
But Amy had already written her dissertation on transitional trauma and how it goes from generation to generation.
Yes.
And so her background is something substantial. We just had a training yesterday. We were in Raleigh, and Amy is an expert in that. And so she is somebody I highly respect. Because she really knows her stuff and she's good at what she does. And I was telling Amy has an influential spirit, which means that, in my opinion, when she's talking about her area, people gravitate to it because they can relate. And she has some significant stories that kind of explain why trauma is such a, we all experience it. It's not just something that we, like to talk about the 9/11. You may not have been in New York, but 9/11 will always be something imprinted in your brain because you saw the images or you saw things that traumatized the 9/11 scenario of what happened. And so I think that, she says we all have been impacted by trauma some aspect, and you're right. We've done some workshops where we may have had 15 slides and we only got to slide 5 because the staff or the organization that we were talking about trauma, you realize that people are real. That's why I say it's so important for leadership to understand that you cannot expect people to meet the bottom line and not address trauma.
Yes.
Because people have lost family members because of COVID. You had racial tensions going on. You had an epidemic that was worldwide. You had social unrest. Political unrest. There was so many things that exposed COVID. I think if anything that it did show, it showed how unstable our world is.
Absolutely.
And I think that we thought that everything was okay, but in reality, people were not okay. And COVID just exposed that. And I think it exposed not just in the in the communities of color, but it exposed people all over.
Absolutely,
and I think that, it was something where you would not talk about because maybe you lived in $1 million house and drove a Lamborghini and everything looked okay. But the reality was that the house was a mess.
Yes.
And so I think that what you're seeing is that people are now willing to address the fact that maybe I'm not okay.
Yes.
Maybe I need to go see someone to talk to professionally, which is okay.
Yes.
I think that, I think that that's something that even in our community, we have to do a better job of. And Amy hits that. And then, of course, you have Patrick, who's doing the fatherhood initiatives. And Patrick has worked for President Bush, President Obama. He's done some phenomenal work in that area of fatherhood. And then, of course, you have Dr. Chance Lewis, who's doing D&I work, and Chance runs the Urban Collaborative, which is a national model for many urban school districts. And then, of course, I think that, yes, we can help other people. I think that, that's the goal, is that how many people can we help to make the school or education system or nonprofit or business right. Because people want to be successful. I don't think nobody wants to fail. I think no one chooses to fail. I think that they want to find a way to create the right path so they can be successful. I don't know anybody who does not want to be successful, but you got to put the time in to do it.
Yes.
And the resources to do it. So,
Yes. Wow, Todd. Man, listen. Talking to you, man, is like literally talking to a wonderful onion. No, listen. Every level that we pull away from, it just becomes deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And I am so ingrained, and I'm so grateful that you are at the forefront, bro. Man, 35 years, if not longer, and this is our first time talking. So hail to Pitt, brother. That's
hail
all
to Pitt,
right.
baby. You better believe it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes.
I'm glad. Let's stay connected.
Yes.
Let's make sure we do that. And I just, however I can help. Yeah. You let me know. If there's anything I could do with anybody, just let me know that.
So the podcast, right, is talking about entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about allowing the entrepreneur to tell their unabridged story. And hopefully the podcast itself will get traction, and we'll begin to get more like-minded people that will allow me to interview them, and they get a platform to tell their unabridged story, right?
Right.
So I'm so grateful. But before we close out, though, can you just give the listening audience, right, your contact information?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, it's of course my name is Todd Pipkin, and our company is TAP Expert Educational Consortium, and our website is www.tapenterprises.org. So that's www.tapenterprises.org. Or you can just Google TAP; it'll come up. And then my phone number, contact information is 803-230-2643. Again, that's 803-230-2643. You can call me because it goes on my cell phone. And then, of course, my email address is toddpipkin95@gmail.com. But you can go to our website. All our information is there. My email address for TAP, I have a TAP Enterprises as well. So it's tpipkin@tapenterprises.org, which is my company's email address. But that's the best way to get a hold of us.
Yeah,
and you go to our website, all information is on there. My contact information is on there. If you go to our website, everything, you'll see our team on there and the work we're doing, and be happy to help any way we can.
Listen,
any way I can help somebody, I'll be happy to do it.
Todd, this was fantastic. You are doing enormous work. You're doing great work, brother. And man, you are the turnaround guru. That's all right.
No, I wouldn't say that. No, I wouldn't say that. No, I say just whatever I can do to help. I just believe in helping. I think that's what's important. I hope. So.
Now let me ask this question before we.
Yeah.
I always say let me ask this question before we end up, but. Can you tell me one story where you came into a turnaround school district or a turnaround school, and you've actually changed the life of like one individual that still keeps in touch with you today?
Yeah, I laughed because, I wasn't on, I never forget when Facebook first came out.
Yes.
And I think I had left Olympic already. But I remember my sister called me and talking about this Facebook thing. I said, what is this? So I got on there, and I remember several of my kids found out that I was on Facebook, and
Yes.
it was like this rampant signature of a friend request. I'm talking about, like, these are all these kids from Olympic.
Yes.
And I just remember all my kids, from Brittany to Terrence. I mean, I remember saying, Mr. Pitt, what's going on? How you doing? And it was just so funny to see them. But all of them have said, like Brittany just got married. Brittany was a fighter. That girl, I don't know how many times I spent with her, but I would be in her behind, and she is doing really well. She
Awesome.
got married, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I look at just some of the kids that I know that were having some difficulties, but now are doing something. You don't see
yes.
what you do till down the road.
Yes.
And I think the one thing about social media, you can connect to, students that you maybe worked with 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and you see they have families, you see that they're doing something. And I think it's always a blessing for me. My kids have always sent me something that said, Pip,
Yes.
it's because of you.
Absolutely.
And where I'm at today. And so, I feel good about that because you try to work with them as much as you can to help them. And it's just rewarding to see them, man, down the road.
Wow. Todd, listen, man, don't be a stranger. I opened this platform to you and to your staff, man.
Yeah.
This was fantastic. I had no idea that this is what you were doing and or how involved it was. Because I would always see you on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And you're working out and you're talking about you're going to this school, you're going to this one. And I'm like, what does this brother do? So I'm so glad you came to this platform and you allowed me to interview you. And you are doing grandiose work, man. Fantastic, man. We need more Todds in the urban community, the urban landscape, man, because wow.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Because whereas most people would have given up. Yeah. You said this is my pivot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so
exactly. I appreciate the opportunity, Kev. We'll stay in contact. Let me know how I can help, and
all right.
We'll go from there, my friend.
Thank you, brother. Have a great day. Let's talk in text.
You too.
Man. Yes, sir.
Talk. All right. Bye-bye.
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 That concludes another episode of the Entrepreneurial Enclave with Kevin Wortham, the podcast that focuses on building, maintaining, pivoting, planning, and investing in you, the entrepreneur. We hope you found this episode informative and enlightening. If you have any questions or comments about any of our episodes, please call 609-731-9311 or email kevin@minding-our-business.com. We look forward to joining us for our next one. Until next time.